So it's been about 2 years since I started my YouTube channel, and ever since my video on the selection blew up, there's one comment that I always get without fail on every single one of my videos. And that is someone pointing out my Percy Jackson collection. I got a few books hiding it right now, but I have the original Lightning Thief trilogy. Whoa, what's wrong with me? Like, guys, I don't think you understand. I'm such a major fan of the franchise. I have a tattoo of Riptide on my arm with a quote from one of the books. Let's just say Percy Jackson has been a special interest of mine ever since I discovered the series when I was in 8th grade. And even though that's where I started, it did introduce me to my broader love of mythology. To this day, if I see a book marketed as a mythological retelling, I will immediately add it to my TBR, especially if it's a myth that I'm unfamiliar with. What can I say? I like to broaden my horizons and explore the world around me. So when I picked up Aicha, a book that not only promised a retelling of a myth in which a ferocious woman enacts revenge on her colonizers, but also had this amazing cover, I was sold. I went into this book with pure curiosity and innocence, and by the time I finished it, I was left feeling devastated but satisfied. Because while this book wrecks you with familial bonds, doomed romance, and colonial violence, it also gives you hope seeing Aicha and her people fight back against oppression, especially when you get to see just how far she's willing to go for her freedom. Let's just say, Aicha does not hold anything back. So without further ado, hello, welcome back. It is a new day, a new sleigh, and a new video where I have something to say, and today I will be reviewing Aicha. I will start with a brief, spoiler-free summary of the book, and I say spoiler-free in quotation marks because it's a myth retelling, so if you know the myth, you're gonna know what happens in the book. Kind of in the same vein as people saying, oh, I don't want spoilers for the Odyssey movie. So Aicha is a debut novel by Soraya Bouazzaoui, which is a retelling of the Moroccan myth of Aicha Kandisha. I hope I am pronouncing that correctly. I know Aicha is correct. I don't think the last part is correct, so I apologize. Please correct me. I will explain more about the myth and the origins once I get to the spoiler section of this video, so for the sake of this summary, Aicha, our main character in this book, is the youngest in her family. She has one older sister and her father, who is a blacksmith and prominent figure in the resistance. Aicha's home was colonized many generations ago by the Portuguese, but by the start of our story, they are on the brink of a revolution. The previous ruler, the Sultan, is planning an attack on the Portuguese to drive them out, while Aicha and her family are helping the resistance from inside the walls. The story follows the countdown to the siege as the resistance works to weaken the Portuguese through starvation and sabotage. But one of the Portuguese captains is closing in on Aicha and her family and is hell-bent on taking them down. So it's a race against the clock for Aicha to help her people without getting caught. Along the way, we learn more about her relationship with her family, her secret romance with her childhood rival Rashid, and a dark voice within Aicha that has an unquenchable thirst for blood and is begging to be released. Now, there is an author's note at the beginning of the story that does give the disclaimer that there were some liberties taken with the real-life timeline of events. So the historical part of this novel isn't exactly a one-for-one based on what actually happened. I will also note that while these characters are Muslim, this story is not a depiction of fully practicing Muslims. Namely because some of the characters engage in activities that would be deemed forbidden, like violence and certain romantic acts. I only say this because even though I myself am not Muslim, I understand that some Muslim readers might have an expectation of how they are depicted in books. An expectation that might not match up to what we have in this book. I know that this became a very hot topic when I reviewed Four Eids and a Funeral. You can watch my full review on that book, but basically the situation on Goodreads was diabolical, to say the least. There were a lot of negative reviews on that book where people were just attacking the authors and questioning whether or not they were real Muslims. So the only thing that I will say is that if you do not want to read a story like this because of the depiction of Muslims, then that is your prerogative. But in no way should any critique of the book be directed at the author, nor should her own identity be called into question. But that wraps up the spoiler-free section of this video. If you don't want to know what happens in this book, I suggest you click off now. Although I highly encourage that you do check out this book for yourself so that you're able to come back to this video and get the full deep dive analysis. Even if you don't come back back to the video. Like, the book is just good. I think you should read it. And with that out of the way, let's get into the rest of the video. So first things first, we do have to talk about the myth that this story was derived from. So Aicha Kandisha from the Moroccan myth is described as a beautiful woman, a temptress with hooves that lured men to their deaths if they dared cross her path. Respect. What can I say? So based on my very surface level research, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the myth evolved over time and her origin story became one of resistance. Aicha was actually based on a real woman that did actually help take down the Portuguese soldiers that were invading Morocco. I saw a few different versions where either she was the daughter of a prominent figure at the time, or she would essentially tempt the Portuguese soldiers, lure them into alleyways, and then have the resistance fighters kill them. It just depends. I saw a few different versions, but in retaliation, the Portuguese soldiers took her family and murdered them. Of course, this sent her into a spiral of rage, and the myth claims that even to this day, Aicha Kandisha's spirit lives on, attacking any man that dares cross her path and falls for her temptation. Now in our story, Aicha's mother died in childbirth, and as a newborn, Aicha was on the brink of death. Her father, Fuad, had no choice but to seek the help of a shuafa, a woman with magical abilities. Their Muslim beliefs tell them that the shuafa walk a path of darkness and are condemned to hell. But in his grief at losing his wife, Fuad has no other choice if he wants to save his daughter. The shuafa named Ilham saves Aicha, but not without a cost, because in order to save her life, she had to put a demon in Aicha. This creature inside her, manifests as a voice that becomes more prominent as the story goes on. It whispers violent thoughts in Aisha's head and begs to be released. Throughout our story, Aicha has an internal battle with this entity, occasionally losing when she is pushed to rage. But she only ever gives in to this voice when she sees injustice. Which brings me to one of the central themes, and one that I thoroughly enjoy in this book, which is female rage. Now, there is a difference between the surface level aesthetics of female rage and the multi-layered complexity that makes it so appealing. As a woman, I think there's a certain expectation for how we should express our anger, which is usually not at all. Angry women are crazy women, and no one wants a crazy woman for a girlfriend or a wife, right? Because truly, our only purpose in life is to find a partner and mold ourselves into the most idealized version of a woman, because that's the only way we can be seen as desirable, and that's the only way that we can fulfill our life's purpose, which is to get married and have babies. A little side tangent, in this book, there is a romance subplot between Aicha and Rashid, and look at me, I'm a love cynic. I was kicking my feet. I loved every single second of it, even though it is a doomed romance. But I especially loved the way that their relationship was developed, because Aicha is very clear that she has a lot of fears about being a wife, particularly because she thinks that there's an expectation on her to have children, and she does not want them at all. She has a bit of trauma, as you might imagine, because her own mother died in childbirth. So she has no desire to go through the same thing. She loves Rashid and she wants to be with him, but she's not sure if she's ready to make that commitment, because she doesn't want to let him down by saying, hey, I don't want to have kids. Which personally, I really love the way that the book handled it, because as Aicha is explaining these fears to her sister, she's like, Rashid loves you. You know that if you tell him that you don't want to have kids, he's going to be okay with it, because he loves Aicha, the person, not the mother, not the wife, her, as an individual with her own goals, dreams, aspirations. Truly just another beautiful reminder that that will never exist in real life. He just sees her as a person and a human being and not just a vessel to carry progeny. Knowing what I know about what happens at the end of this book, it's not fucking fair. It's not fair. He was perfect. They could have been so happy together. It's unfair. But anyway, back to female rage. Typically, if women are allowed to express anger, it's usually through tears. The anger almost always gives way to sadness, which is a completely valid expression of anger. I myself am someone that, without fail, will cry when she's angry. I don't get angry often. I'll get mildly irritated. If I'm genuinely enraged, irate, tears. But while that is a valid expression of anger, I think there are so many other ways to portray the emotion. And I think there's a growing fascination with seeing the pure, uncensored anger that women possess. The blood-curdling screams, spit flying, curse-filled rage. Women getting right in, usually a man's face, and unapologetically confronting him in a way that historically we are not conditioned to do. We are constantly taught to turn the other cheek. Don't cause a scene. Ignore the harassing comments. Be the bigger person. Even in relationships, we are conditioned to accept dissatisfaction and shortcomings as an act of true love. So don't confront him on his behavior. Don't tell him how he's not meeting your needs, because maybe somewhere at the end of the road, you'll find gas station flowers and a shut up ring waiting for you. A consolation prize for sticking it out. Sorry, I'm really getting into the spirit of this book, and I'm just like letting all the rage out. Believe it or not, this isn't even 1% of the rage I hold within my body. My favorite quote is from Victoria Aveyard on the Plot Twist podcast. She said that she is so angry as a person that she wakes up with her fists clenched, and I have never felt more seen. Which is so funny because I don't think I come across as a very angry person. I am. The reason I don't lash out more is because my anger rants are very short-lived. The way that I express my anger is like that one clip where the girl is like, "Are you kidding? That's not fair. She made those." I need to calm down. Everything's fine. That is truly the epitome of how I express anger. It's just a little burst and then I calm down. I come back to reality and I'm like, nothing is that serious where I need to be yelling. I currently don't have anything to be that angry about. But that could change. Because believe it or not, just because women are told not to express our anger doesn't mean we don't have it. Doesn't mean it's not boiling under the surface of our skin, just itching for release. And more women are realizing that in a world where we can never live up to the expectations of the patriarchy, why bother trying to hide it? Why do we continue to pretend that we're just nice girls that never experience anger or pain? Which is precisely what I loved about the female rage element in this book. I talked a lot about female rage in concerns to romantic relationships. And while I do think it is a subset, I will boldly claim that female rage is an umbrella, usually regarding situations concerning men or the broader patriarchy. In Aicha, her rage is in response to her circumstances. She's living under occupation. She is constantly at the mercy of the Portuguese soldiers, particularly a captain by the name of Duarte. If you asked me how I'd put my little spin on it, I would say Duarte, but I don't care for that man enough to say it properly, if that is properly. I don't actually know, nor do I care. So Duarte loathes Aicha and her family because they're untouchable. So Aisha's father is a blacksmith, as I already mentioned at the start of this video, and he is favored by a high-ranking official in the Portuguese military. And because of his good standing, they are under protection even from Duarte. So even though he suspects that they're conspiring with the rebels, he can't really do anything about it. At least not without having solid proof first. And even though he can't hurt them physically like he wants to, he can definitely do so psychologically. In a flashback scene, Aicha remembers the moment when Duarte enters their home without permission. He suddenly pops in one day and targets her older sister. While he doesn't do anything more than grab her by the arm, his comments are laced with threats. He talks about how she's getting close to marriage age soon and otherwise makes comments that make Aicha and her sister uncomfortable. Aicha is angry because not only is he sexually harassing her sister right in front of her and her father, but neither one of them can do anything to stop it. The rage builds inside her until eventually the voice gains control. It pushes her to grab a poker from the fire pit and stab it right into Duarte's hand. While Aicha feels relief in the moment at fighting back against Duarte, it immediately evaporates when she realizes that there are consequences to her actions. Her father is whipped in her place and brutalized by Duarte in retaliation, and Aicha and her sister are both forced to watch. Duarte continues to make harassing comments towards Aicha as she gets older, threatening her with both physical and sexual violence, all while knowing that she can't fight back. Because Aicha might not care what happens to her, but she has loved ones that Duarte can very well hurt. And Duarte knows that that's her weakness and knows how to exploit it. And over the course of the book, as we get closer and closer to the siege, Aicha keeps getting pushed to the brink. The sight of injustice and cruelty is just too much for her to bear. anger and her rage boils over. And this rage is not only in response to injustice, but also to her own feelings of inadequacy and helplessness. She feels deeply the burden of seeing other people suffer and knowing that she can't do anything to help, whether it's happening right in front of her or on a larger scale of colonialism. But the voice inside Aicha, this demon entity, helps her realize that she is more powerful than she knows, and it allows her to give in to these rage-filled instincts. As I mentioned already, Aicha is brutal in this book, unapologetically killing soldiers that stand in her way by any means necessary. We constantly get her inner thoughts throughout this book, where she is just thinking of the most violent and graphic things that she could do to a human being. And mind you, like, she's not getting a power buff from the demon entity. It's not like it's giving her super strength or anything, at least not in my interpretation. Like, this is just all her. The voice is just telling her, like, hey, give into that rage, but she doesn't fully succumb to the powers of this entity until the end of the book. Everything before then is just her letting loose. I've read a few female rage-esque books in this past year, and I have to say, this has to be my favorite one. Some of the other books I read, you know, they were a little scared to lean into the rage. You know, there was some yelling, maybe like thinly veiled threats, but at least in the books I read, I didn't get to see a lot of like pure brutality, pure expression of rage. Funny enough, I also read a different book where the premise was a girl eating guys, and I was like, okay. But in the book, like, she really only ate one person. It was very minimal. Like, I think she ate an eyeball, and that was it. In a like purely not weird way, I was like, I think we could have cannibalized a few more people. I'm sorry, okay, if I pick up a book and you tell me it's female rage, I want to see like to its fullest extent. Like, I'm expecting Pearl. I haven't seen that movie, but I've gotten the synopsis and I know that that's like a pretty intense movie. So when I think female rage, I'm thinking that. I'm thinking Jennifer's body. And maybe it's because I was reading like YA and like I understand why they might not want to be as graphic. Maybe I'm just looking for female rage in the wrong places. So that's on me. But you know what? It's okay, because I eventually found this book and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Aicha truly holds nothing back, and even with every graphic description of her rage, you know without a doubt that these people deserve it. I'm not saying that because I'm a violent person. I'm not a violent person, not in any means. But trust me, you would think the same way if you knew the full extent of colonization. Which brings me to my next major theme in this book. Something that gives more light to Aicha's character and why she's so angry. We learn in this book that generations ago, Aicha's hometown was normal. The people were allowed to travel. They could practice Islam freely. They didn't worry about things like hunger and violence. That was until these people showed up and decided that this land, that the indigenous people had lived on for generations, for as long as they could remember, suddenly didn't belong to them. All because a king that never set foot on their soil said so. You have to understand, colonization is not simply someone moving into the empty house next door. It is a violent overthrow and removal of the people that are indigenous to the land. It's erasure of their history, their culture, and their values. Generations later, in the present timeline of this book, Aicha lives a very different life. She is not able to practice Islam freely like her ancestors were. Aicha isn't allowed to wear a hijab. She can't even leave town freely. The Portuguese hoard resources, forcing everyone else to starve, all just to run back to Portugal the minute that they're outnumbered by the rebels. Years of violently clinging on to this piece of land just to abandon it the minute they were outnumbered. As you can tell by how passionate I am, there's a certain bitterness that comes through when you read the book. And genuinely, it hit very hard in my chest. The pain, the anguish I felt while reading this book was truly ancestral. And the ultimate sadness is knowing how the book ends. By the end of the book, as we get closer to the siege, Aicha realizes that while she was out helping her friends escape, her sister and her father were both captured by Duarte and executed for treason. Basically, there was a plot a la Hunger Games style, where Aicha and the rest of the rebels blew up the supplies that were in a secret tunnel. They managed to get away, and although Duarte did have his suspicions, he didn't have any proof. That was until he tortured another rebel member and got the information out of them, which is what led to their execution. Hope is temporarily lost, but Aicha is able to gather the rest of the remaining rebel members and move forward with the siege. The night before, Aicha decides to get married to Rashid, knowing that it could very well be their last moment together. Early the next morning, the rebels attack, and as Rashid tries to protect Aicha, he is stabbed through the chest by Duarte, right in front of her. I'm actually gonna get so emo about this. Like, this whole scene is my worst nightmare. Like, it wasn't enough that he died protecting her and that she saw it, like she looked into his eyes as it happened, but then Duarte's bitch ass takes Rashid, fucking impales him through the little lift that opened the gate to help the Sultan and his rebels come in, so that it would force to stay shut, basically locking it in place with Rashid's body. Then Aicha, who is injured and saw the love of her life die in front of her, tries crawling to him so that she could at least give him some respect in death and remove him from that thing. And as she's crawling, Duarte cuts off her fucking legs. If I had to suffer, you're suffering with me. This is what he says. "You will not run to your allies," he cut. "You will not walk to your lover," he cut. "You will not stand and watch this city burn," he cut. "You will lie here and die slowly, knowing that you failed." And I was just supposed to be okay with that? Like, I was just supposed to move on with my fucking life? I put that on the level of, like, Finnick and Newt dying. Like, that was so genuinely brutal, and I literally was in fucking tears. I was inconsolable when I read that. On the brink of death herself, and after that lovely taunt by Duarte, Aicha decides to finally give in to the demon within her. She transforms into the Aicha that we know from the myth. She takes out the remaining Portuguese soldiers on the island, driving them away in boats, but not before following Duarte on one of those boats and violently killing him. Truly satisfying. Hell isn't hot enough for that man. It should have been longer. And Aicha, in her full demon form, is finally able to free her home and her people once and for all. The ending is bittersweet, to say the least. We as the reader know that Aicha was finally able to achieve her goal. She helped them gain freedom, but she wasn't able to enjoy it with the people that she loved the most. It's absolutely gut-wrenching, in part because the book does an amazing job at fleshing out the relationships between Aicha, her sister, her dad, and Rashid. To me, I would definitely say that this is a character-driven story more than it is a plot-driven. Like, we have the countdown to the siege, and that is something that you're aware of in the back of your mind, but truly, what I think about most when I think about my experience with this book is the characters. I think when it comes to fantasy, people expect a more plot-driven story. I did see some reviews that were a little harsh, and I love the plot in this book, so forgive me if I don't understand why people are not leaving 5-star reviews. When it comes to the central themes of this book, I think it's just necessary to have a character-driven plot to flesh out these relationships so that you can understand what the book is trying to say. Aicha is characterized by her love for others just as much as she is by her rage, and to understand how she got to her final form, you needed to understand how much she valued her relationships, how much love she had for her family and Rashid. There is a certain cultural aspect in this book. Truly, I think you will understand it more if you have a cultural background that emphasizes collectivism, which I think a lot of like POC communities will understand. The emphasis we put on our family and loved ones is so central to who we are as people, especially in the face of oppression. Like, who else do you have but each other? What else can you hold on to when everything else feels hopeless besides the people you love? Overall, I think that this book just resonates with certain readers more than it will with others, especially if you come from a culture that was altered by colonialism. If you belong to a collectivist community, one that stresses the importance of interpersonal relationships. Honestly, I might be extremely biased here, but I don't understand how everyone didn't give this book 5 stars. When I finished this book, I was sobbing. It damn near pulled out my own heart from my chest and showed it to me. It was awful. And with that being said, it is the front runner for best read of 2026. The book was amazing. The audiobook narration was spot on. And this is the kind of story that is still lingering in my mind even weeks after I finished reading it. This book was so good that I was able to recall all of this from memory. I didn't take notes. That's how engaged I was with the book. I was just flipping the pages, highlighting, writing in the book if I really needed to, but I was just locked in. When I picked up this book, I had no idea what I was getting into. In all honesty, the only reason that I decided to read it was because I liked the cover and I vaguely remembered seeing a post from a librarian recommending it. I thought the book was YA. That's how little I knew about it. Side note, it was actually funny because I started the audiobook and they give a disclaimer like, oh yeah, there's some sexual activity. And I was like, in my YA book, it's not YA. And this is why it's important to go outside your genre, go outside your comfort zone. In general, I like mythology, I like historical retellings, but I typically don't read adult, especially adult fantasy. I don't know. I should read more of it. In general, I should read more of everything. I'm trying. I'm only one person. I have so much time. But not only has this book changed my brain chemistry, but this author is now on my auto-buy list. I don't know what she's coming out with next. When that's happening, I don't care. If she publishes 10 different versions of the same book, I will own all 10 of them. I'm being dramatic, but also not. I'm kind of serious. All I can say is that I can't wait to see what this author comes out with next, and this was a fantastic debut. The fact that I picked up literal gold lightning in a bottle just based off the cover, I didn't know what I had. The minute I knew this book was going to change my life was when I got to the dedication page. If you didn't know, she said Free Palestine. This is obviously someone I want to support. This is obviously someone that's gonna give me a story that's engaging and thoughtful. But anyway, that's the end of my video. I thoroughly loved this book. Truly, it was such an enjoyable experience reading it, even though it was so heart-wrenching. So be sure to leave me a comment. Let me know if you've read this book already, if you're interested in reading it, what you thought about the story, what you find most intriguing, anything and everything you want to say. Just let me know in the comments below. Be sure to follow me on all my social media at Listen to Kristen on TikTok, Instagram, and Goodreads. Be sure to check out Soraya Bouazzaoui on all her social media. Read this book, buy this book, leave good reviews. I don't know, maybe this is a hill I'm willing to die on, but this book was amazing. I understand that it might sound incredibly biased, but quite frankly, it's my channel and I don't care. At least I'm being honest about it. I'm currently looking into the Illumicrate version of this book. Someone introduced me to Pango, which I had never heard about until very recently. I was just going about life saying, oh, I don't need special editions. No. So I might be buying that. But anyway, that's the end of my video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. And you know what? If there are any other mythological retellings that you think are a little niche and you think I might enjoy, be sure to recommend them to me. I love a good mythological retelling. It can be a hit or miss sometimes, but normally it's a hit. Anyway, that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you. And if you made it to the end of the video, let me know if you think I should get eyelash extensions. I'm really thinking about it. I have very straight eyelashes. They point straight down. I don't know how it's gonna look. And the last time I got them, I was not a fan. Anyway, thank you. I hope you guys have a good day.